Hey everyone, I just wanted to jump on here and make a quick video about this hoop building that I just got put up. I did a bunch of research and I couldn't really find any videos talking about how they were built and just very detailed. So I thought maybe I'd make one. This is a 40 by 80 by 20 tall. Gold Mountain is the brand that this one was. I think Chery Industrial, either Chery or Chery, I'm not sure how it's said, is the brand of them now. This one came in these two red boxes here. You can see it's 13 arches, the door size, man door, all that information there. I was pretty impressed with how the box was packed. They had everything stacked in there, and I actually had an issue I'll talk about here in a minute. And each box has a serial number on it. They was helpful. They was able to research it. So you know, that side of things I was decently impressed with. Like I said, I don't know how old this building was. I think it came straight from the distributor, but like I said, I think now they've changed the name from Gold Mountain to the Chery Industrial. When you look up this Gold Mountain shelter.com, it does not come up. You have to go to the Chery Industrial website to find it. So yeah, and I never tried calling the telephone number. But anyway, it came in two boxes. It had the main arches. There's different sections. It had those stacked in one. It had it was just divided up in two. That had the tarp was laid on top of the one. I just lifted that out, and so I could lay everything out. It comes with the ground stakes. Now I didn't use those, obviously. So yeah, the shipping, that part of it, I was fairly impressed with. The rest of the thing, obviously, they are a cheaper building. I mean, you got the size of a building. I paid $7,500 for this one because I don't know how it was that cheap, because I've never seen them that cheap anywhere else. But actually, I had found one on eBay, and the seller sent me an offer for $7,500, and anyway, that's what I got. So I guess the first thing I'll talk about is how I did it. I got it on these 2 by 2 foot concrete blocks. Most concrete plants make those, but you know, I paid $80 a piece, I think, for these brand new. And as you can see, some of the concrete is more crumbly. Some of them are really nice. Others of them are not as nice. But you know, for that money, you can't pour a wall. You can't. That's pretty cheap. And I just dug a ditch and leveled it up with some crushed concrete, some real fine crushed concrete from a local place here, and just tried to level them up best I could. And they're not perfect, but for what it was, I think they're okay. If I tried to do it mostly by myself. If I'd have took the time and really put effort in, I think I could have got them a lot better. And I did have to get a short one, a 3-foot one, to make it get my right length. But a couple of my blocks are not level this way, and so I actually got shingles and shimmed the plates to get them where I needed them. And then the end walls are actually fairly critical because your posts are only so long, and so I had to block those up to make them reach right. I'm thinking I'm probably going to cut these plates off so I don't gouge a tire with them or something. But I got my concrete blocks down, and as per the instructions, I laid out my base plates. And the instructions showed that they were supposed to be 80 inches center to center of this tube. And so that's what I did. I put them down at 80 inches. and that was for the 40 by 20 or 40 by 80 20 tall. And I had some people over, and we started putting the hoops up, and all the hoops went good, and we started putting the purlins in, which is these tubes right here. And it seemed like the closer we got to the ends, the harder we had to pull to get the purlins to match. And we was like, okay, something ain't right. And we started trying to get the cables and tension it up to straighten them, you know, to get them plumb. And we realized that both ends were leaning in about 10 inches at the top. And so we was like, well, that ain't right. So we got a tape and measured the length of the purlins, and they was only like 78 and 3/4 from hole to hole. So over the length of the building, you take 1.25 inches off over 13 hoops, you know, you're a foot short or something like that. So we didn't know what the problem was, and so I got to digging around on the internet and found actually a different instruction book that said to lay the hoops out at 2 meters, which is 78 3/4 of an inch, or roughly. So I didn't know what the deal was. So that's when I messaged the Chery Industrial parts department, and they got my serial number and came back later finally and was like, oh, you have the wrong instruction book. And I said, so who compensates for my concrete end walls that are wrong, you know, all the labor? And they said, oh, well, talk to the person you bought it off of. So they basically wrote me off, and it wasn't worth chasing it. So I just moved all the plates, just had to break out more of the concrete rib, moved the plates. We left one end right, and we actually left the hoops up. We just pulled the bolts out, moved them, drilled new holes where they belonged, and screwed them back down. It actually was not as big of a deal as we thought maybe it would be. But then all the purlins matched, and we got everything centered up, squared up, and everything worked well. So after the hoops were up, you basically go put the purlins in. There's however many rows of them. The hoops come in, obviously, sections. So you have a section up here that's 1, and then you have a section that's number 2 that's here, and then you have a section that's number 3, which is here, and a section that's number 4, which goes to the ground. And so it's 1, 2, 3. It's 7 sections for each hoop. And I just laid them out in a pile of 1s, a pile of 2, a pile of 3, and a pile of 4. And you just stick them together, stick 2 bolts in them, and set them up. And then all the purlins are the same. We went through and put the purlins in and wrapped tape on all the joints. And then the X braces at the end. They have a clip that goes around the tube, and actually I had an extra one laying over here, but they have a clip that just goes around the tube and bolts in there. To me, it was a little sketchy because they seemed like it was going to be a rough spot to tear the tarp, so I tried to wrap tape around them. I got good heavy-duty Gorilla tape wrapped on each joint, or each one of those clips. I hope it's not a problem. Seemed kind of weird to me, but anyway. So that got the main hoops. Then, obviously, you have these cables in here, and I don't know, to me, once again, that's a little bit annoying because they stick out. You know, they obviously stick out, and, you know, you can get into them. As you can see, I backed that in there. You know, you can get into these cables. Oh, about to drop my phone. You can get into these cables with equipment, but I don't know how else they was made to do. I mean, there's no way to hold them back, so I guess that's just how it is. So you put these plates in up here and run the cable down, and then you turn the turnbuckle to tension them up. And we used a laser on the one end hoop to shine up to the peak, and we tensioned them back and forth until we got it plumb, and then just snugged the rest of them up. If you pull the cables down too tight, you can actually see it on this one right back here. If you pull the cables down too tight, it kind of pulls the arch in. You can see it on this arch right here. The cable pulls that arch in, and that's the one we really tightened up to try to plumb the building, and so it really pulled that arch in. But these cables are fairly snug, so I don't think you want to tighten the cables too much. I guess just snug to keep the building, you know, plumb this way, whatever. Then the end walls are fairly easy. You got 8 of these sections right here, and then you got short one and long one of the pieces that have the angle cut up at the top. And you just bolt that little piece of angle iron that they have that has holes in it, and also down here, cross pieces. Then the door frame and the little angle iron up at the peak of the door frame up here. I actually had to drill the one hole out. It was not big enough to fit in the bolt up there, so I had to modify that a little bit. But the end walls are fairly easy to put up. Then after you get that done, sorry about all the zoom issues there. Then after you get the end walls up, you got to hang the curtains on the end. Obviously I put this up with this man lift, borrowed it off a friend. What I did is I actually tied the strip across the top of the door. I kind of figured out where the middle was and tied it to the basket. I did this by myself, and so I just tied it to the basket with just baler string, lifted it up there, tied it to the bar, and then I just got baler string and just went. I did like two places across the door, and then I flipped. Obviously the center was kind of hanging outside, so I flipped it up and heaved it up and tied it up at the peak, and then I just kind of went down both sides, just pulling it up and kind of tied it, I don't know, maybe at the peak and maybe 3-4 places down along each edge, and tied the bottom corners just to hold it in place. And then the building comes with a bunch of this rope, and I just started, you kind of got to start down at the bottom. Well, I got too much stuff here, but you just kind of start down at the bottom, and just wind it through the hose the whole way up. And it's a pain because you got to get enough slack through to make it the whole way up. I went up to the peak and tied at the peak and then went down both sides. I don't know if that was right or not, but you got to work enough rope through there to get the whole way to the peak. And then I did up both sides at the same time, and then I started and I like tensioned, like just pulled it tight as I went down, pulled it tight, worked it out, pulled it tight the whole way down both sides, and then tied it down at the bottom. But one issue I had is on this end, I went from the middle down both sides, and then I did the horizontal, and then I did the door last. And when I unvelcroed the door, these pieces are back so far around this pipe that I can barely get the doors velcroed fast. And obviously it stood out here with no roof on it for a couple days, maybe even a week, and the wind actually fairly well pulled it loose. It has buckles that are supposed to be on here, and it just pulled those loose, and the thing just flapped in the breezes for a couple days. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. It's a fairly poor design. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. The back one, I actually have not opened that door. It's still Velcroed like it was from the factory, and I don't intend to open it because it's Velcroed good, and I don't plan on using that door much, so I'm just going to leave it like that unless I have to open it. On the end that I'm going to use the door, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm contemplating with just getting like 1-inch square steel tube and building a bifold frame, and putting a winch, mounting a winch in here on the wall, running up you know, with cables down and having a bifold frame and like screwing the tarp to the frame. That way it holds it in place. And then you just crank it up. I don't know, if I would do that, I'd make a video of it. Right now I'm just letting it go a little bit to see how I like the building and whatever. Yeah, whatever. All right, so you got the ends on. I did all that by myself. It was a chore. Definitely had blisters on my fingers from pulling all that rope. Stuff is kind of abrasive and not great. But anyway, got that on. Did the back end. I did that a little different. I actually did the door posts first. And then did down the outsides. I don't know if it changed anything, because like I said, I'm not intending to unzip that door until I absolutely have to. Then the door, you stick that tube through the bottom. There's a metal pipe that goes through there, and that's to help pull the door up. Obviously your ropes are here to pull the door up. The one's really short. The one is clean up there. You can barely reach it. Kind of seems cheap, but anyway, and the other one's like way too long, so I guess I could loop them and tie them together or something. I just haven't. So you get the door on, and then after I did that, I went back over the frame, made sure all the bolts were tight, all the tape was wrapped on all the joints. There was nothing loose, nothing tight and sharp, and I got 4 guys together, and the cover was folded in a way that I kind of had to flop it open a little bit to see how it was. But basically, we started at one end. The one end we left parallel or right where it needed to be, and then we unrolled the tarp, or unfolded the tarp as we pulled it the length of the building, and then we flopped all the folds except the last one. The way the tarp was laying, we flopped all the folds except the bottom one, flopped them out that way, and that left the tarp laying with this side on the ground, like the underside down on the ground. Then we folded just the edge back so that we could run the pipe through the loop. Obviously it's got this little loop here. We ran the pipe through there. The pipe comes in sections, snaps together, and we ran it through the whole way there. And we tried to center it up on the building. And then we just cut little holes. The ends, obviously, we could stick them on. But the 2 places we had to, we cut little holes. Well, now I can't even find it, but here's one. We just cut little holes that we could stick a string through. So I had got this blue baler string and tied it together and looped it up across the building first and just had it hanging there, and then we tied it in these loops at 4 places, here, about there, and on both ends. And thankfully the wind was blowing the right direction, and every so often we'd get a little gust of wind that would just lift the tarp up off of the hoops, and we'd heave on it. If it wouldn't have been for the wind, we could not pull it with just 4 of us. We could not pull it. And we did have some problems with the pipe sticking through it, getting caught like up there in the peak and stuff. I had to go up and catch it a couple times a time, and yeah, but we was able to just work it across there with the wind's help. It would billow it out, and we'd pull, and it worked very well. A lot better than we thought it may. So we got it on and just kind of tied down all 4 corners, just loosely or whatever with the string. Actually, we just looped them, tied them, and we decided the instructions on these things are very vague. Just almost no instructions on how to do stuff. A couple pictures, very vague. So we didn't know what to do first, so we decided to try just looking at it. It looked like the tarp was actually short, it was a pretty big gap on both ends, and we didn't quite know if this was gonna work, but we got a rope and started in this corner here, and once again just spiraled it up through there. It was a pain in the neck, but we got it up, and I tied it at the hole in the middle at the top, and just started pulling it tight, and obviously this was the first corner, so we actually got this corner almost too tight. We figured out we needed roughly, you know, a span, whatever, roughly was where we needed, and we actually got this corner right here a little bit tight. We had to actually loosen it off later, but we come down this side, and it really looked like it pulled the tarp, and then we went over and did this side and pulled it tight, and it was amazing how many wrinkles we got out of it. And we started kind of losing as we come down when our gap got wider, so we come over here and loosened this side, so it worked it that way a little bit, and just cinched it down as tight as we could down that side. I think as you come down, it gets a little harder to pull because it's got to slide on this pipe, and it was hard to get it to slide. So I think on both sides we got a little wider as we come down towards the bottom here. And then we come back and did this end and got it to where it looks fairly even all the way down. And as we got it down, then we started trying to put these straps on. Basically you have to come and cut a hole at each pad, or each ratchet, and we started trying to pull those down, and we had just a little bit more over that side than we had on this side, and we thought, well, you know, we'll tension this side and pull it. Well, it ended up it didn't move much, but it's been a couple days, and I've tensioned this side a lot more than I have that side, and it's really pretty well evened out. I guess the tarp stretches and whatever, but it's very, very close to even. But we tensioned this side the whole way down and tied it off here. And once again, we did lose a little bit as we got down to the bottom, but it's still pretty close the whole way up there. And I think it's actually probably loosened up a little bit since we did this a couple days ago. But after we did that, we started putting straps on it, a couple of them, and then we came over and did this side, and we actually ran out of rope. We had to go to Tractor Supply and grab another 100 foot of rope. And this is where things went a little bit worse, but once again we ran our rope up through and tied it up at the peak, and it seemed like that rope flowed through the eyelets a little better. Just it didn't catch. It was easier to pull it through. So I don't know if that's what caused it or not, but this is, like I said, where things went wrong, because we were trying, this was the last corner, and we were trying our best to get this whole thing tightened up, you know, get everything squared and even. I mean, as you can see, the gap down here is wider than it is over here. So we was trying to pull it tight as we could, and it was me and another pretty hefty friend of mine. I'm a little hefty myself, and we were heaving on that thing, and right up here we had a little oopsie, and so we just kind of tried to loosen, not pull quite as hard right there. It does have that rope through in front of those eyelets, but it just started pulling the rope out after the eyelet popped out. And as you can see, right here's the peak, and that happened right here, so it was down there a little bit. So we tried to loosen off a little bit and come down and started heaving on it again. And as we got down here, we was trying to cinch her down again, and another one popped out. So that's two things that kind of really disappointed me. And obviously this one was close enough to the bottom that it started pulling the rope up through. The rope is not hooked. It just kind of started pulling the rope up through. So we didn't really know what to do. So we just kind of put the last one through and let it go. We cinched this down, and it's less than ideal, but this just kind of kept getting looser and looser. So what I actually did is come down here. It may have been a bad idea, but I cut this loop, pulled the rope out, and tied it fast so the rope can't keep just going up. And then I just put this cable clamp on here to try to keep it from spreading, you know, to keep the tension tight rather than, you know, ripping out. I don't know what the long-term effects is going to be, but hopefully the tarp loses a little tension, and it's not quite as much tension on the rope. I mean, clearly it could be tighter, but I think it's going to be fine. I really do. Because obviously you have this flap that comes out around the edge, and that was another little thing that I did. They don't have any way to tension this strap that goes through that flap. So I went back to Tractor Supply and I got my ratchet straps to put in there so that I could really tension that thing down. Because to me, that's what keeps the wind from getting under your tarp, whatever. So I pulled the first side tight as I could on the flap. The flap really came out over farther than we thought it was before we started stretching the tarp, but it came out like it was supposed to. So we pulled it side down tight and tied it. You kind of got to work and work and work to get that thing tight. But we pulled that out there and tied it. And then this side, I pulled her down pretty tight and stuck it through and put that ratchet on to try to hold that flap down over the edge. Maybe it was maybe it wasn't necessary, I don't know. But then one other little incident I had was somehow this rubber cap got missed in the end of this pipe, and I realized it, and I was trying to pull this flap up to put the cap in, and as I pulled the thing up across that pipe, it cut right through the tarp. So that's not great, but once again, this is just the flap, the skirt or whatever. It's not structural. In here is where the loop is that the pipe's in, and the only reason it has that much tension on is because I have it pulled tight right here. So once again, I was really disappointed, but I don't think it'll have any really big bad effects. So that's pretty much how it was. I have come back out here several times and tensioned it down, just snugged it down again. It's amazing how loose they actually get. But like I said, I'm still trying to tension this side a little more than this side to keep it hopefully even. But it's really close to even, so I can snug both sides up. So that's kind of my story of how I put the thing up. I don't know, it's cheap. It's clearly cheap. But if you just need some weatherproof storage for a couple years, if it's something you don't know, you don't have a lot of money, you don't know how long you're gonna need it, you ain't gonna get a building for any cheaper. I'm pretty sure that's a fact. And my theory is if the cover rips off in a couple years, I'll get a local company that makes covers to put a good cover on it or something if I need one. So I don't know. Like I said, for the price, you get what you pay for, but for the price, I think it'll do everything I need for the near future. They say the cover is a 7 to 10 year cover, like 40 psi snow load, 50 mile an hour wind rating or something like that, which the wind rating is a little scary, but yeah, hopefully here where we're at, it's not too bad. Windy, I don't know. We do get some wind occasionally, but not anything terrible most of the time. So that's pretty much it. One other thing I should have said way earlier in the video is when I originally broke out concrete to put these pads down, is the pads are not, they're exact same on both sides. All the pads are the same. So on this side, they go that way, and on that side, they go that way. So if you're measuring to lay them out or whatever, I actually broke out all my concrete, and then I went and laid my pads down, and I realized I had broke it out the wrong way, and so I had to break out more concrete going the other way. But then I ended up having to move the hoops, so where I had broke out extra concrete was actually close. I didn't have to break out much on this side when I had to move my hoops. But that's just a tip to keep in mind, is those things are opposite. And I also didn't think about putting bolts in a certain direction for the tensioners, so I had to bring a portaband out here and clip those bottom bolts off. That was something to keep in mind. And every other one is in behind this cable, and it's a pain in the neck, but if you just mess around with it, try to pull the cable out, whatever, you can snug it down. It's just not a great design, but hey, it is what it is. So that's pretty much all I can think of As far as my experience, we got the man lift in that one brace right there. That one ain't great, but I don't think it'll hurt anything. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can think of, and hopefully that can help some people know a little bit what you're working with when you go to buy it. I may have done something wrong. Like I said, the instructions are pretty vague. You kind of got to go off of pictures and just off of yeah, it's not great. But make sure if you get one, I assume what happened with the instruction thing is that they used to make them a certain way and they changed, and they probably had a bunch of old instruction manuals and they just kept throwing old instruction manuals in. I assume that's what's wrong, but like I said, they sell the building as a 40 by 80, but it's actually only 40 by 78 and some 78 and a couple inches, 78 and 10 inches or something like that. So the building's actually shorter than they advertised, but I guess they just wanted to make it even 2 meter spacing. I don't know what their point was, but anyway, that is, I'm gonna quit rambling now. Hopefully I can help somebody out, and yeah. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to comment, and I'll do the best I can to answer. Thank you very much. Have a great day.